session of Beyond the Classroom. And the session is really dedicated to having conversations where we look obviously beyond what's going on within the classroom. And we step back and we take a much bigger look at the challenges we are facing as educators in delivering educational access to our learners to maybe better prepare them for the 21st century. I think all of us acknowledge there are massive challenges in the public school sector in terms of access to resources and as well the curriculum and the modality of teaching and what's going on in our classrooms. And while we continue, as we have always done, technology is bypassing us. And many schools are embracing technology and using it to introduce different forms of teaching and learning and possibly better preparing and equipping their learners for engaging with the 21st century. So when I heard about Nova Pioneer and I was introduced to Des, I thought getting her and her colleagues onto a call like this would be really interesting. Their reality is not the same as ours in public schools, but Des comes from a background of having been a principal or a headmistress, I'm not sure what the correct term is, of St. Mary's primary school for girls. I think an incredibly advantaged and resourced private school environment, but she was brave enough to leave it, to chart a new course and launch her own network of schools that are both in South Africa and Kenya. And I think the benefit of doing that was, or the opportunity of doing that, was to reposition schooling at a price point that maybe was more appropriate for South African and Kenyan middle class, given that the long-standing private schools are virtually unaffordable to most people in our society, but equally to reinvent an approach to teaching and learning. And I think the amazing opportunity she and her colleagues have had is to craft schooling around their own vision as to what they would like to see happening in the classroom and how they would like to adopt and frame their own ethos and values and use that in the way they deliver their teaching and build their relationships with their learners. Now, in public schools, we maybe don't have the same scope and the same ability to shape our own environment, and we certainly don't have the resources. But I certainly thought this is a conversation worth having to see if there are any lessons and tips we can learn from Des and her colleagues and work out if some of those elements could be introduced into our own classrooms and our own learning environment. So I think that's the goal. Des will introduce herself better than I did because I just had a quick squiz on the internet. She will give you a better sense of the ethos and values of Nova Pioneer. And together with her colleagues, I think they're going to have a conversation and share this. And I think the session is going to be set up as conversational. It's not a lecture. So I think if anyone feels that they would like to jump in and ask a question, I think raise your hand and Des will manage the session and draw you in and deal with your question and direct it accordingly. For me, I'm on the road. I've had a very tough few months. We've been in continuous production since lockdown. And we've been in production and we've been working with teams and short teams and trying to continuously produce content for television viewers. It's been enormously challenging. I haven't had a break. I've had to continue operating continuously. And I decided it's just time to get on the road and go down to the coast. So technically I'm relocating for an indeterminate period of time. And I have to get back on the road to get to where I need to get to before it's dark. So I'm going to listen to the introduction and then I'm going to get back in my car and see if I can hold the call, which I suspect I won't. So I may be in and out, and I just want to wish all of you a really, really informative and engaging session, and to hand over Des and say, Des, thank you very much for making the time and bringing your colleagues on, and let's have a good session. So Des, over to you.
Right, thank you, Clifford, and safe travels and enjoy your temporary relocation to the coast. I hope you have a great time. I did for a week, managed to get down to Cape Town. Just to make a correction, I'm not the founder of Nova Pioneer. I've worked with Nova Pioneer and I've worked closely with the founder defining what the academic model would look like. And I have the privilege of working very closely with Chinezi Chijioki and the other founders, academic of the schools and help define the academic model. And I'll speak to that a little bit more later. So just to give you an idea of what we worked on as a team to discuss today was really just an introduction and an overview of Nova Pioneer. A short video, and there you will hear Chinezi speak, who's our founder, the vision of a Noveneer. And then I'm going to ask you to create a See, Think, Wonder chart to just consider and reflect on the things we discussed today, so that if there's anything you see that makes you think more deeply, anything you think about, and anything that it makes you wonder about, those can generate deeper questions that we can share, consider, and look at possibilities. A brief intro about mind shifts needed now more than ever in education, what our culture principles look like at Nova Pioneer and how they underpin everything we do. And I'll introduce you to our team members who are with us today, and each of them will speak to two of the culture principles. As I said, detail of the academic model. And then we're going to look at some information from Samson, who looks at innovators and entrepreneurship in our space, but also at possibilities for all schools. Innovators and leaders, how we say we're schools for innovators and leaders, how do we go ahead and develop those young people to become innovators and leaders, and we don't just add it as a byline in our branding. The other element to make this possible is our innovative teacher coaching and teacher development program, a very significant part of change and making exciting opportunities in teaching and learning come alive. And then just to consider any possibilities, or the thread of possibilities will be seen throughout the different conversations, so that you can consider possibilities in your own practice. We don't want it just to be, well, this is how we do it and that's it. This is really how we considered possibilities and continue considering any possibilities in innovation. And so to really look at what makes Nova Pioneer what it is, our mission is a pan-African network of schools, and the intention is to grow across Africa. We're presently in South Africa and East Africa in Kenya, a total of 13 schools from pre-primary into secondary, and actually we acquired a school last year in the Eastern Johannesburg region, and that starts from 3 months old. So we really do start from young and move all the way through. In South Africa, we presently offer the Cambridge curriculum, and in Kenya, we do the national curriculum, the Kenyan national curriculum. And the founders offer schools in which our young people would grow up to shape the world and design the world of the future and not just work in it. And that really meant we had to relook the way teaching and learning was happening within a school. And as we talk it through, you will get to see how we have considered that and how we make it happen. So there is going to be a video, and Bronwyn is going to play the video. I will stop sharing. It's called The Vision of a Noveneer. But I just challenge you to, on a sheet of paper, draw up 3 columns, see, think, and wonder. And just to give you background to this, this comes from Harvard University's Invisible project. It's a lovely idea to use in your own classroom with your students. It's one of their basic thinking routines. There are many. Book, if you want to access it, to get a whole lot of different strategies for making inquiry learning come alive in your classroom. And one is just called a See, Think, Wonder routine, where you make a note, what do you see or what do you hear on the video, on the conversation? What does it make you think? And what does it make you wonder? And the wonder is the part where it pushes you to consider further possibilities. So that's always the exciting part of a See, Think, Wonder routine. So I'm going to stop for a minute, stop sharing, and hand over to Bronwyn, who will play us the short little video, it's 2 minutes long, of the vision of a Noveneer. Thanks, Bronwyn.
We started Nova Pioneer because we wanted to offer schools that were different. Schools in which young people would grow up to shape the world and not just work in it. That's why our mission is to develop the innovators and leaders who will shape the African century. Now, to do that, we need to develop Noveneers in 3 ways. The first is character. The character of a Noveneer is defined by a set of 6 specific mindsets and behaviors that we call our culture principles. They challenge us to set high expectations, grow from every challenge, and seek to serve. The second are capabilities, specifically the capabilities to solve problems collaboratively and to develop high levels of academic mastery. Our students require both of those to take on the world with confidence and to create new possibilities for themselves and for others. The third area is connection, connection to the world and to each other. We are a Pan-African network because we want our students growing up connected and sharing experiences with students from all across the continent. And we invest in a post-school success program to support success and connection beyond school. If we can develop those three things well, character, capabilities, and connection, we will meet our mission of developing young people who can shape the world and not just work in it. I started by saying we started Nova Pioneer to offer schools that are different. Too many schools are places where year after year, students learn that they can't. I'm not an artist, I'm not a singer, I can't do science, I can't do math, or I dare not risk trying. At Nova Pioneer, we want to be different in that way. We want to be a place that year after year, week after week, day after day, students have the opportunity to learn and discover that they can, that they are fundamentally capable to learn and to grow, and to take on the world as optimistic and self-assured innovators and leaders.
And as we continue through the conversation, just any notes that you have, what are you hearing? What does it make you think about? And what do you wonder in relation to your own practice? Or, you know, what are the frustrations that you may find that make it that it's not a possibility and it's something we can discuss and even share out beyond this webinar? And I think just for all of us, it's key that we know mind shifts need to happen for any organization to transform. Mindset shifts need to happen. I think the evidence for us is very clear, particularly as we navigate what we are navigating presently. Oh, sorry, my screen is just jumping. Let me just go back. With COVID, we've all had to learn new ways of doing things. And I'm sure that you've all in your own schools realized that our traditional model of education designed for industrialization, industrialized context, no longer is valid. We've had to jump into making shifts to the way we look at teaching and learning. And at Nova Pioneer, we were fortunate that there were elements of it that we'd already moved to, but we had to make that sudden jump from in-person to online and remote learning. And we used a combination of synchronous and asynchronous teaching to support our students as that happened. But for any organization to transform, Erin Sachs and Anupam Kundu from ThoughtWorks put this together. And I think it just speaks so much more over the last sort of 3 months and the work we've had to reconsider. And a big thing for Nova Pioneer, it's moving from profit to purpose. There's an absolute mission around the work we want to do, and it's around getting our students to design work of the future based on making an impact in communities as they design this entrepreneurially. Moving from hierarchies to networks, from controlling to empowering. And this is what we do with our teachers, our students in the classroom as well, because the students work collaboratively. It's not about the teacher as the teacher who knows it all, standing in front of a classroom and sharing their own information and own knowledge, which is a very narrow form of knowledge. It's vital. The teachers are upskilled to share knowledge. But when we bring in the voice of the student, we empower the student to think and share their thinking and make their thinking visible, which opens up a network of minds, which really speaks to deeper learning and deeper understanding and co-creation of future learning. And from planning to experimentation. Yes, it's great to have set plans, and we all use set plans, but to have the freedom and opportunity for children to explore, design, experiment is where the deeper learning happens. And doing that in collaboration with their peers is how we go about socially constructing knowledge and co-constructing knowledge. And no longer fully private, but to be transparent. And we know the world with our students that we work with, that is key for them. There should be no secrets in the way we go about our teaching and learning. Sorry, I'm just trying to move the screen. And that brings me to our culture. Sorry, it's jumping. So the culture principles, which you saw on that screen briefly, brings me to the introduction of our team members. And I've asked each of them to tell you a little bit about themselves. Their brief journey at Nova Pioneer, a brief overview of their journey at Nova Pioneer, and they're each going to share our 2 culture principles of our 6 and what it means to them and how they've seen that in practice. So I'm going to start with Luciel Morgan. Luciel Morgan is presently Dean of Instruction at our Boksburg campus, and she's going to share about Solutions First and Greater Together. Thank you, Luciel.
Thank you so much, Des, and good afternoon to everybody. As Des mentioned, I'm the Dean of Instruction at Nova Pioneer Boksburg, and so that means I do oversee the curriculum elements as well as teacher development at the school. My journey in education is quite colorful, and I think it's something that I don't share often, but I think important to share because it really frames and it has shaped the way that I approach teaching and learning, and also what the possibilities are. I started my career in education about 11 years ago. It was at an under-resourced school in east of Johannesburg in Katlehong. Very disruptive experience, but I think quite essential as well because it did open up a new way of thinking. And so I think even as we go through the presentation and we look through the solutions that are available and the creative ways of thinking through things, I think for me, that's really where the innovation and the creativity started, because you really had to make do with what you have, and really a consistent thread throughout my education experience. If that was not enough, I moved to the Northern Cape a few years later, and I had to teach Afrikaans, mathematics in Afrikaans. So again, I remember sitting in the principal's office and he handed over the timetable to me, and I joked and I asked for the English classes, and he said to me, no, there is no English classes. You're going to have to teach absolutely everything in Afrikaans. But again, the innovation was quite important for me to quickly adjust and to reinvent myself, and at the end of the day, really seeing that it is possible. I was quite fortunate thereafter to spend some time in the United States. I spent 2 years teaching in the States, and I think also a very valuable experience because it then got me exposed to better resource schools, classroom management practices, etc. And so that was really great from a professional experience that was fundamental in shaping how I view teaching and learning. When I came back to South Africa, something quite core to me was being able to convey and being able to share the knowledge that I've gained in my teaching experiences. And so that is what led me to Nova Pioneer. The values
Luciel?
Oh dear.
Yeah, we seem to have lost Luciel.
There she is.
Yeah, are you back, Luciel?
She's on mute.
Oh, she's on mute.
There you go.
Oh dear. Okay, so I don't know if any.
Are you back?
I am back, yes. Where did you lose me?
The values of Nova Pioneer.
You were talking about as you were moving from the eastern in the Cape, the Northern Cape.
Oh yes. I don't know if I covered the experience in the United States, but I think quite core to that was when I moved back to South Africa, there were key things that I'd learned.
We've lost you again, Luce.
Yeah.
Environment in order to ensure that consistency is maintained. And so that is really what brought me back to South Africa. I remember being at the airport and realizing that If I make whatever decision I make is going to be a decision that is going to take me through for the next, is going to last me through the next few years of my education career. And that's when I discovered Nova Pioneer. And the value alignment was quite closely related to what my personal alignment is. And that is creating a learning experience for students that makes them feel like schooling is for them. So yeah, so I think through all of this, and like Clifford said at the beginning of the presentation, we are quite fortunate with the resources that we have, but I think also just thinking about the possibilities that do exist. And the hope is that throughout the presentation, we'd be able to see that. I want to talk about solutions first and greater together, and just to provide context for our culture principles at Nova Pioneer. From the very beginning, it was quite important for us to articulate what our values are, so that we can have a consistent thread of values that underpin absolutely everything that we do. With solutions first, we believe that everything is possible. There is no task that is too great that we cannot achieve. And so it's just thinking about how do we think creatively about solving problems, how innovative we are, and through all of that, you will see that there's an answer for absolutely everything that you are looking for. The second culture principle that we talk about at Nova Pioneer is greater together. And I think this also speaks to the fundamental idea that we experience our world through relationships and working with one another. And so collaboration is quite key in absolutely everything we do. I was quite excited when Des had called on the team, and Des had said, you know, she does need people to just support and help with the presentation, because each of us brings to the table such a unique set of skills. And it's important that we teach our students, we teach our people in the community, that we can achieve so much more when we work together. So yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. In a moment, I will be talking a little bit more to the different ways that we do embed the innovation and the creativity in our teaching and learning.
Thank you, Luciel. And it's great that we're all being greater together today. I value that. I'm going to ask Samson to introduce himself, and Samson will speak to us a little bit about our culture principles of high expectations and my favorite, joy of learning. So thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, team. It's a pleasure to be here. I think it's an opportunity for all of us to team up and continue working on the greater ideas that we have, especially for our country and our continent. I will start by just giving you an origin of where I come from. I'm from Mombasa, Kenya. That's where I was born. And in 2002, I left for further studies to go to Cuba, where I was offered a scholarship to study economics and finance. Again, a total new environment where the only language spoken at the campus where I was sort of sent was Spanish. And now you can imagine how, coming from a little town in Mombasa to an environment where no one understands what I could say, only if I speak Spanish. But again, the experience of going through the Cuban, learning system and education exposed me to greater opportunities. It was through Cuba that I was able to visit most of South American countries, Colombia, Venezuela, and also the Central America, Mexico, Guatemala, Panama, and all that. So that offered me sort of a wider scope of seeing that actually this world, the only thing that separates us is nothing but borders that are on maps. But beyond that, while I was studying economics and finance, we were exposed to pedagogy. And this was an idea that Fidel Castro then I remember him visiting our campus, and he said that in this point in life, whether you're a doctor, whether you're an engineer, at some point in time, you will have to either share your ideas or impart knowledge to those that do not have the opportunity. Now, it sounded very vague then, that I, who would love to be a great economist in future, and someone who's handling finance, and to turn to education. We did not see the correlation to that at the point in time. But again, when I graduated then, landed in Mexico, and my first job that I was able to get was actually to train and teach others to communicate in English in a hotel. But it didn't take long. 6 months later, I will leave to go to the Bahamas, an island that is an hour flight away from Cuba, and maybe 55 to 60 minutes flight from the Gulf of Mexico. But again, when you look at it, the first thing that I looked at when I reached the Bahamas was teaching, and this really opened a whole horizon for me. I was able to teach Spanish, I was able to teach economics to primary school, high school, and even to further education and training institutes. So this actually opened a whole sort of scope for me, and that's when I saw now that teaching actually is a self-fulfilling kind of career, and it opened new doors for me. There was something new that I learned every day, whether I'm in the classroom or outside the classroom. And in 2017, I joined my wife, who had left studying in Cuba then, and I said I'm going to embark on a new journey to go to South Africa. I decided in the month of August 2017 that I'll leave and go to South Africa. And I joined my wife here. And the first opportunity that I had was to engage and teach at Wilberforce Community College, which is in Everton, Sebokeng. I was able to lecture there, accounting, public finance, and public administration. And then I joined Nova Pioneer shortly, and the whole teaching experience changed. In fact, I even questioned the years of experience that I brought into this career because it was a whole new way of teaching. And I was exposed to what we call the inquiry-based model of teaching or learning, where the teacher is a facilitator. Now, I was coming from a background where the teacher carries the weight of learning. But in this case, it was a two-way process. In other words, learners must be a part of it, and the teacher is only a facilitator. And so my passion for teaching, again, had to sort of come to a point where I'm now learning new things. I'm enjoying the way of imparting knowledge. I'm learning from learners themselves, which sometimes seems to be far-fetched when you say we're learning from learners. What does it mean? But it means that there was always a continuous teacher development. And just to mention, Luciel, who spoke earlier, was my first manager. And I can say that whoever I am today, I give her all the credit. Of course, she will not want to accept that, but she needs to accept that now, that I am a product of all that she sort of put in me. And so in our way of operation here at Nova Pioneer, we look at the whole education in several buckets, but the most important bucket that I would like to sort of share are the buckets of instruction and school-wide culture. So again, for us to have a school-wide culture, we needed to either work on our culture principles or accept what other students will bring in from other environments. So we needed to actually work and align our intention and our mindset into the culture principles that you see here today. But I'd like to speak about the high expectation and how it resonates with all of us at Nova Pioneer. So with high expectation, simply, without using any jargon, simply means that we need to to embrace in a mindset that believes that we can always reach the goal, no matter how long or how difficult it is. And therefore, it speaks to both our teachers and students' mindset that the structure that we have, we should be able to reach the set standards and the set goals through our mindset. Now, are we saying that just by setting high expectation that we will achieve? Definitely not in a moment, but it is important that we ingrain this kind of mindset in our children and our students especially, so that they can believe in themselves first. And by doing so, we're actually creating a leader, or we're creating leaders that believe in, yes, we do have processes, yes, we do have a path, but again, we need to set standards that everyone should be able to reach. Now, again, the other principle that I would like to touch on and speak to that resonates with all of us is the joy of learning. In this culture principle, it simply helps all of us to continuously improve in our way of work, in our way of engaging, in our way of teaching. So again, there's a continuous improvement. And I spoke earlier about my own journey. Coming to Nova Pioneer it was like I was starting from zero, you know. It is a whole new way of teaching now. It was very easy to give up and say that this model is not what I'm used to and what I'm accustomed to. But again, the mindset and that joy of learning and bringing that energy into whatever I do, and it sort of builds up a structure that encourages the entire team, and hence celebrating progress and learning and even accepting
Thank you,
failures.
Samson. Take it away.
At the same time, continuing to work on our failures. So joy of learning and high expectations for me resonate very highly with what we do, and I hope that this translates into what you're doing out there. Okay, so in my own journey, and I keep working on, you know, I'm not perfect, and so I keep working on the little things that I have to work on, and I hope one day that I'll be of a greater influence to not only lead a small team, but also to lead, you know, a whole sort of school network that will enable us to continue working on our vision and mission in making this continent a better place for future generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Samson. I think that's a great reflection, and it's your journey in becoming a top educator certainly, I think, resonates with many people, where you may not have started off as an educator, but look where you are today. And I think that is all around the always growing belief that we have, as well as the significant coaching and in your teaching development that probably has come your way. And as you mentioned, Luciel, graciously. So thank you, Luciel, as well. I'm now going to hand over to Claudia Pienaar, who is the school leader at our Nova Pioneer Paulshof campus. And Claudia is going to speak to us just about the servant leadership, as well as the always growing. So thank you, Claudia.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So thank you for this incredible opportunity. A short summary of my journey in education. I've been in education for 18 years. I taught in the classroom for 15 years. And, you know, after 15 years of teaching, and I did 4 years of lecturing, and then I did 2 years of academic support in a higher education institution, I really came to this point where I was like, okay, like, how am I going to make the biggest impact on education? Because I love teaching. It is the most incredible thing. And even though I'm a principal now, I just say, I'm still a teacher. Like, give me half a chance and I'm back in the classroom. So I wanted to be in a place where I could be the change, be part of the change that was needed in education. And I found Nova Pioneer, and the opposite journey, I moved from the coast up to Joburg, and I haven't look back for a single day. So that's me in a nutshell. I've been up to some other things along the way in education, but I really want to focus on these two culture principles. The first one, servant leadership. So when Des said that we could choose, you know, which two we wanted to do, I got on there so quickly because I really wanted to talk about servant leadership. Because my first, well, I suppose all of my experiences with leaders, I hadn't really seen servant leadership, but it's always where my heart had been. And then when I started doing my second honors, I actually attended lectures. And our very first lecture, it was on leadership. And the lecturer was saying, right, what are the different types of leadership? And everyone was giving their contributions. So I, innocent old me, put up my hand and I said, servant leadership. At which point my university lecturer laughed in my face. And it was from that moment I realized I was not really amongst people whose hearts were in the same place as mine. He laughed at me and he said, there is no such thing that is not a leadership style. So anyway, put my embarrassment aside and carried on. And when I discovered that Nova Pioneer feels so strongly about servant leadership, I knew I'd found, well, that and a million other reasons, I knew I'd found my tribe. Let me tell you fundamentally what we teach our children. We teach them that leadership is not about power. It's not about control. It's not about being the biggest or the boss of things. It's actually about making yourself the least so that you can raise others up. It's about doing the jobs that nobody else wants to do. It's that you're the one, if there's dishes left in the sink, you know, by the end of the day, you're the one that washes the dishes. You don't say, I'm the leader, I'm not going to do the dishes. And that really, it just speaks to me. And it truly speaks, I think, to what true leadership is about. So we teach this to the children. And I have to say that this is modeled right from our CEO down to the smallest children. A 4-year-old said to me one day, are you the boss of the school? So I said, no, I'm not. He said, but you're the principal. So I said, yes, I'm the leader. And he said, well, what does a leader do? And I said, a leader takes care of everyone and makes sure that everyone is okay. And he was like, oh, okay. And then he ran off into the jungle gym. And that really is what leadership should be about. And this is what we teach in our children. So I want to give you a perfect example. My campus opened 3 years ago. On our big opening day, it was pouring buckets of rain. And Chinesi Chioki, who's our founder and CEO, was in the car park with an umbrella, walking parents into the building. Didn't expect me to do it. He left me, you know, shaking hands and greeting everyone inside. Our CEO, the one person who should have been ushered in with the umbrella, was the man standing in the car park helping people in. And the children see this. We had a dress-up day called Culture Principle Dress-Up Day, where the children had to choose their favorite culture principle and get dressed up. And one of our grade 3 boys dressed up as a servant leader. But he was actually just like dressed up in a suit. So we said to him, you know, Timor, tell us about yours. So he said, I am Mr. Chioki, or actually the children call him Mr. Chinesi. I am Mr. Chinesi. I am a servant leader. That a grade 3 child can see from the CEO what servant leadership is, and they talk about it right down to 2 and 3 years old. For me, that is going to really shift the climate of this world, of organizations, of workplaces, of institutions, if people are in leadership positions where they realize that leadership is about lifting others. So I'm very passionate about servant leadership. The next one is always growing. I love this one so much. I love all of them. You know, I could always say this one's my favorite, but I love always growing, because this is about celebrating our mistakes and embracing our mistakes and learning from them. So we don't celebrate them and then just leave it. The challenge is to acknowledge where you've made a mistake, analyze what you did wrong, and then go back and fix it. So we call it failing forward. So you make a failure, but it moves you forward. And one of the things I say to the children and my own children is we don't use the term practice makes perfect. We say practice makes progress. So always growing is a celebration of our learning, because mistakes is evidence that you are learning and growing. One little anecdote, so both of my children are in the school at Nova Pioneer, and my youngest little boy, from the age of 4, before he got to Nova Pioneer, his teachers would say he's so scared, like when he works, he shakes and he hates making mistakes and he falls apart. And I'm super, super relaxed with other people, but I'm very hard on myself. So I know exactly he got it from his mama. That's where he got it from. So this always growing principle has helped transform my little boy from this anxious, scared child in the classroom to this very confident, outspoken little boy, doesn't mind if he does something wrong because he knows that he's always growing. And your mistakes don't define you. What defines you is what you learn from them. So that is what our culture principles are. Those are the two that I'm speaking about. And as a parent, they're so ingrained in our children. My children even speak about them at home. So if they're having an argument, they're 8 and 9 years old, they'll come to me and they'll be like, Malachi's not being greater together. Or if they don't make their beds or whatever, or if they don't want to make their beds, they're like, Mommy, please can you make my bed? That's really servant leadership. So obviously we've had to clarify that a little bit. But it really is about, yes, we want our children to be academically strong, but we want them to be good citizens. And that is what our culture principles do. It goes into the academics, but also the social and emotional development of our children. And back over to you, Des.
Thanks, Claudia. Thank you so much. I really just want to reiterate how the culture of an organization must permeate into all elements and areas of practice. And that's exactly what we do with our teachers and our students, our apprentices, our parents. There's a consistent language of culture principles that is spoken. And Claudia's just shared some incidences where her own children have taken that home. And many parents share how the children bring home these culture principles and live them out. So I think that definitely is something that we foreground and we highlight. And I think it's key in any changing organization and new organization that there's a very strong culture and belief in what the principles are that underpin the work that goes on. I'm just briefly we've spoken some of these elements of the academic model, but just to give you some context of where some of these ideas come from. So the image of child, an image of a competent student, is when we go into a classroom and we know that the students in front of us have far more knowledge than we are going in there with. We may have studied that subject, but the students bring in the different thinking and the different connections and the different strategies that can evoke deeper learning. And that comes from the Reggio Emilia approach, where they believe, and that's an approach from Northern Italy, which says their learning goes from 0 to 99. So it started off as an early childhood practice, and it has now become a practice for citizens of the world from 0 to 99. And they believe children are born citizens and have the rights of citizens and should be seen as such. And they should be treated with respect. We need to understand their competencies and capabilities and regard their thinking as high thinking and use it in our learning, and how to generate collaborative conversations by letting them listen to each other, to co-create and socially create their knowledge and build on that. And that pulls through the Harvard Making Thinking Visible strategies, because that is when you make a child or a student's thinking visible, or you ask them what they're thinking, instead of just, if they give you a response in a classroom saying, no, that is incorrect, you say, tell me what you're thinking that makes you say that, pushes it to a different level. And so often that is where the point of innovation is, because someone has thought of something different. And that's aligned to work with Project Zero, as well as some of the MIT, their thinking lab, their exploratorium speaks to our exploration day, the projects that we do to get our children to really explore, create, co-create, ideate, prototype, test, iterate, and move through the different phases of design thinking. And I'm going to then just hand you over to Samson, who is going to speak to us about innovators and entrepreneurs, because obviously to be innovator, it's great, but what do you do with what you innovate? So the entrepreneurship side of it really needs to be taken care of. And I think we have the perfect example at Nova Pioneer because our founders are social entrepreneurs. They really wanted to make an impact in education on the continent. And so they started their for-profit and they worked out their model for the for-profit, for-purpose organization of Nova Pioneer, all to make this impact in the bigger educational project of Africa. So Samson, I hand over to you to give us a little bit more info around how this happens, how this design thinking is used within a classroom and within a journey of a student through the school.
Good. Thank you, Des. Thank you, Tim. Good. So a little bit of background on design thinking and why this approach is, becoming the trend of the moment. Now, when we talk about design thinking, we relate it to successful businesses: Google, Microsoft, Apple, Samsung, and basically what they've done with that, or how they use design thinking, is to continue differentiating their products from what's being offered in the market, and that way they're able to create a very unique, either unique selling point or unique selling position. But when you think of design thinking as an approach in education, then it becomes a little bit vague and very wide as a discussion. And I have no doubt that there's no a discussion that can exhaust what design thinking is and the possibilities that it offers to our students and our learners. And in this context, South Africa, or the continent of Africa in that case. But let's look at what design thinking is in the first instance. So design thinking is simply an approach that can be used in learning to develop learners' sort of creativity and confidence in saying that whatever activity they're doing in the classroom is actually enabling them to believe that they can create and solve problems that exist in our communities. But again, when you look at our own curriculum, which is very linear, it speaks to skills that are necessary for our learners to sort of have before they exit for further opportunities, whether they decide to go to universities or they decide to go to work. Definitely, they need some adaptive thinking. They need some communication skills. We have no doubt they need to learn how to collaborate and sort of engage in critical thinking, and also with technology. These are necessary skills that our learners must have in order to build up sort of a resilience, whether they go for further education or, as I said, whether they decide to go and work. But design thinking is an approach that kind of negates or pushes back on our own curricula and our own linear system of teaching. In design thinking here, we're not only looking at the product, but we're looking at the problems. Now, this is a totally different approach. It's one thing for us to, create students who will compete with the world when they go to universities, for example. But it's another to produce leaders and innovators who will come out, and regardless of what they decide to do, they actually people who are going to engage in solving real problems that exist in our community. And much of it, when you look at the background of our own economic, social network, we see that we are all facing the same problems. For example, no matter where we are right now, we are embraced by the coronavirus, and it calls for everyone to pull into their forces, finances, ideas to solve this problem. But how can we then translate this into our own learning style and models and approach in our schools? So we need to focus on building confidence and building students and learners who are responsible enough. But we also need them to connect with what's happening in their communities. And that is what we refer to as empathy in design thinking. So not only are we enabling them to be confident and think of of ideas and come up with ideas that can solve real problems, but also we need them to sort of connect with the problems that exist in our communities today. And therefore, in design thinking here, we engage our learners in questioning. We engage our learners in bringing in their own ideas from their own view. We engage our learners in observing and collecting data. So you have to actually engage learners in making sure that they are part of the process. And part of that process is collecting data that will speak to the solutions of the problems that sort of exist in our communities. Also, in design thinking here, we must also see it as a continuous learning process. And at one point, you might think that, you know, although we teach different subjects, especially in high school, that these are island or isolated subjects. Design thinking negates that, and it wants you to actually see all subjects as multidisciplinary and see all subjects as tools that can enable us to solve real problems. Now, again, it's a very wide and thick topic to discuss in a the shortest time that we have. But in design thinking, I think the takeaway here will be to see how, therefore, in our own curriculum, our own way of teaching, how we can sort of engage our students in the human-centered design. In other words, let's focus on the problems that exist. Let's focus on the context. Let's focus on the emotions, how learners think education will serve them in their communities. And this is very important for them. But how, therefore, can we translate design thinking in our own contexts in schools, whether we are a privileged school or we are a school that has no resources? We can still engage into it and adapt this kind of design thinking through, if you're in a classroom, for example, if you're designing a lesson or planning a lesson, we got to use the backward design approach, which is beginning with the end in mind. Again, if it's a case study that you're using to sort of to engage learners in a deeper discussion, how does it resonate with the problems that exist? How does it resonate with the people around where our students are coming from? And so it needs us to adapt our own way of teaching and our own curricula in hands-on and practical solutions that they can come up with, and not necessarily solutions that are going to be financed or need finances in that case, but solutions that they think that can make a great impact in solving real problems that exist out there. And I'm going to give an example so that I can bring some context into it. But in our own way of adapting design thinking, we find that our curricula and our syllabi and you look at the schemes of work are very linear in a manner where it's a topic and it's activities that are matched to that topic, and of course the assessment. But I think we need to start thinking of how we can prompt essential questions, which is the bigger picture for each and every theme or lesson objective that the learners are engaged in. For example, if I was teaching about entrepreneurship and the role of entrepreneurs in our community, I think the bigger question here will be, how do you see businesses transforming in the wake of coronavirus? I mean, I want learners to now start thinking of how, if they were to become entrepreneurs, will they engage with an ever-changing and dynamic environment? And I think that is important because, again, 2-3 years from now, we're bound to be faced by new challenges and new problems that will need them to sort of engage in a very different manner than what they will have necessarily learned in the classroom. And so it's important, again, to look at design thinking in a collaborative sort of environment where we want learners to see that the maths, the English, or the Afrikaans that you bring into a project can actually be a part of and be a great input in solving real problems that exist out there. And so in a collaborative way. We believe that learners should actually engage more in practicals. Learners should engage more in projects that resonate with what is happening within our communities. And I'll mention some few of those projects that you can engage in, whether you're a privileged school or an unprivileged school. So to look at it this way, we must also start engaging our learners in a way to think of being leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs that focus on building our own communities rather than focus on making larger and bigger profits. And therefore, the social aspect and it brings about sort of a high level of emotional intelligence to say that, yes, I want to be an entrepreneur. Yes, I want to, of course, make money. But at the same time, I want to solve problems. In other words, by doing so, I'm enabling and empowering others that can support the business that I'm, or the venture that I'm engaged in. And so it's important that we look at it this way. And there's so many platforms that you can actually engage learners, whether you are in KZN, Cape Town, or wherever. We have very many platforms, and I'll mention some. The Alan Gray Entrepreneurship Program, for example, and a challenge enables learners to participate and come up with real solutions. And we've had a privilege at Nova Pioneer, for example, of having our students collaborate with students across the country in bring about solutions to problems of energy. We have food shortage in our country today. Our oil prices seem to be, fluctuating every second, if not, every day. But again, you can see that learners were a part of coming up with real solutions, and these are solutions that are presented forth to our own government, so that they look into how then the learners are seeing that some of these problems just need an innovative way of working around them, and not necessarily large amounts of money that are being pumped into the system. But Alan Gray is one of those that they can engage in and bring about real solutions in our communities. We also look at the Junior Achievement South Africa. We should engage our learners in such a collaborative tasks and projects. We've had the JASA program looking into agriculture, for example. How do we transform our learning processes so that we can engage a Black majority of our students in venturing into agriculture? Because again, in our own system of education, we value less agriculture. But again, it's the core sort of existence for all of us, humanity. We cannot survive without food, but this is important. We can also look at other programs like the Commerce Olympiad, which again facilitate a process of how then learners can transform their own ideas, their own passion into real opportunities. And we've had quite, I can say we've had quite good solutions that are coming out in the community. I think recently the one that I need to snap more and talk about is the recent solution that a student came up with on how municipalities can deal with the large amounts of calls and questions that come in while they're not able to facilitate, or they're not able to give responses to each and all of those questions. And so a student came up with a very simple idea on how municipalities can engage in automated system where if I just want to know how much I owe, to the rates or rents, the automated system can actually give you the response. That was coming from a student. And again, you can see that there was some level of, or high level of empathy there, where the learner was seeing this as a problem that existed in their community level. And so design thinking really has brought about how we see opportunities in solving problems in our community. And it's not just something that we might say that it will solve problems in the next 5 years or so, but I think and I'm hoping that our curricula will adapt this in depth to say that in each and every lesson objective that you have, whether it's maths, whether it's English, whether it's Afrikaans, whether it's art or computers, that you're able to engage learners in solving real problems and let them design, let them come up with a prototype, let them come up with sort of visualize the idea in a bigger picture to say that we believe that this can do. And most times then it might fail. Some of those ideas that they have might fail. But what's more to it? The greatest innovators in the world, I believe, failed more than than we can imagine, and therefore the spirit of them going on and trying and trying new ways is important if we are to have a very solid foundation of learners coming out of our systems and solving the problems in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Samson. And I do think that really, as a teacher, knowing to nurture and guide the students' curiosity is a gift. And it's something that we are all responsible for. We all need to be making sure that's what we're doing so that they're following their passion with a purpose to make that impact and to make that difference. And it's something we really do try and create and generate with our students. And Luciel is going to speak a little bit about how we do this. How do we get this innovative mindset as well as the leader, the idea of a leader, and what do we do to look for that and build that and encourage students to investigate and inquire for themselves on this journey. Thank you, Luciel.
Thank you, Des. I think for many, it all sounds good on paper, and so I think it's an important time to just stop and pause and just to talk through how it is that we actually embed this in everything that we do. At the beginning, Des mentioned that in our Boksburg campus, we've got students as young as 3 months old. And so for us, the journey of becoming an innovator and leader starts really, really early on. And I think just for us to, I'm going to talk quickly through, just if we can skip to the next slide, Des. One of the core things that we focus on is making sure that we've got a very set framework that we can work through. You will see in front of you a framework of our lesson designs, and I think it is quite nice because it's something that can be adapted to any learning environment, and obviously something that has helped us to nurture that curiosity to continue to make the learning quite relevant to our students. We talk about a 5E lesson plan at Nova Pioneer, and it starts off in the first bracket where you can see that a lot of focus is placed on engagement. Again, students need to feel like learning is for them and they need to be interested in the learning. So it's important as a teacher to use that skill, your professional skill, to be able to engage the students and pick out something that you think will be relevant to them, or even better, observe and watch and have them come up with the things that they would like to discover. The second phase of that is then moving into exploration. Once the students have identified topics of interest, allowing them space and opportunity to just go out and explore it extensively, and just look at the different possibilities that could exist from the things that they don't understand. And no more than this COVID period that we have, and so much that we could maybe generate questions from. You could be, if you could exploit mathematically by looking at the statistics. You could maybe even look into the biology. You could allow students to journal what it is that they've been seeing going on around them with the pandemic. You can look at the history of pandemics. And so it's important that you allow students multiple platforms and opportunities to be able to express themselves and to study and look into topics. I think very central and core to this model is where your professional skill as a teacher comes in, where it is important for you to be able to synthesize the information that students are coming up with. And so, yes, there is an opportunity for you to explain, to help students improve their understanding, and just to provide that guidance in the learning experience. But yeah, the next step then takes us to how do we then construct new learning opportunities? stemming from what it was that the students wanted to find out, what new information there is that we've been added to it, and how can we then elaborate and frame it into something that they can then discover and take even further. And then finally, allowing them an opportunity to evaluate their learning. And so something that we do differently at Nova Pioneer is that we incorporate a lot of peer assessments, allowing students an opportunity to give each other feedback, to look at their own work, to look at ways in which they can improve what they've come up with. And so it's not just the teacher giving the student feedback, but it's also what we are able to learn from one another as well. And again, the culture principle, greater together, comes in here, because there's so much that we can do to help and improve each other's learning. If I've come up with a design that looks impractical, or that has some improvement that is needed, my peers are best positioned to be able to give me that feedback. And that is something that we need to teach our students, that it's not just the teacher who's going to be giving all the answers. We do allow for multiple investigation and explorative activities. What you will see in this picture is an opportunity where students are going outside, and they are, in this specific example, they're studying different seeds. And in a traditional school, if you are a life science teacher or a biology teacher, you know that the extent of exploring and discovering seeds always goes as far as students maybe taking a bean, planting the bean and watching it grow overnight and seeing what comes from that. But we genuinely, in this example, we've allowed students to go and recreate their own seeds. And so it's just thinking about it outside of the box and thinking about different ways that we could explore the same topic. Very important for us to keep up with 21st century learning. And so technology is something that we just cannot avoid. We've been fortunate at Nova Pioneer. We do make use of Chromebooks and computers, and we look at how we can then use that to extend the learning. And so picking out programs that is going to do that. But you can just as well do it with what you have, and maybe looking at various applications on the cell phone devices, and seeing how students can then move through and work through that as well. And then finally, it's us also setting aside opportunities for them to undertake projects that are more long-term in nature, and then that gives them an opportunity to maybe then build in the skills, build in their artistic skills, build in their scientific skills. And we run what we call exhibition days at the end of every term, where they are then able to consolidate everything that they've learned. So I think that sounds all fine and well, and you're probably thinking, yes, but you guys are able to achieve this because you've got all the resources in place. But I think just to close off, I do just want to talk about things that you can do at your school in order to build in that innovation. The first thing is setting high expectations. I loved how Claudia elaborated about servant leadership, and she spoke about leading through empathy and compassion. And that in itself is quite important, and it's essential. So compassion is important, but we do students such an injustice when we don't hold them to high standards, because it is only when we hold them to high standards do we see how they can be innovative and they can rise to the occasion. So it's quite important that you set high expectations, you teach students how to set those high expectations and goals for themselves, and then you as a teacher can then coach them towards achieving those high expectations. The second thing is really working through exposing learners to learning in different places outside of the classroom. One thing, so this doesn't only mean outside in the playgrounds. One experience that stood out for me when I was in high school was the day my business teacher had us go into the staff room where the staff normally have their meetings, and it was set up in a boardroom, and that was my first experience to understanding what it means to feel, sit around a big round table and just to experience that. And so you can do that too, expose students to different places of learning outside of the classroom as well. Thirdly, quite important for us to build solid relationships with students so that we continuously foster an environment of respect. I think this is quite important for us, especially at Nova Pioneer, where we do teach students confidence. We do teach students how to raise their voice and how to share their thoughts and feelings. But it's also quite important that we develop relationships where they understand how to do so appropriately. And so, yeah, so continuously building and fostering those relationships of trust with their students, with your students. And then focusing on social and emotional learning is something that we just cannot deviate from. The reality is that our students are undergoing in most cases, very challenging living experiences, which does detract from the schooling experience. And so it's important that we are able to teach them strategies to regulate their emotions, how to help them transition back into the learning environment so that we can ensure that the learning is still going to continue. Also, like I mentioned, creating a positive classroom culture. We at Nova Pioneer create ample opportunities throughout the day to reflect on things that have happened. And so if there was a bad choice that was made by one of the students, or if somebody picks up on behavior on the playground that was inappropriate, we turn that into a learning opportunity. And so we gather all the students back and we then reflect on what could have been a better choice in those circumstances. And then finally, there's no better way that you can set the culture at your school other than being a positive role model. And I think I just want to leave it at that, because it is important, as Des said, that the culture permeates throughout the school. And so from your very young pre-primary and infant toddler, it is important that we are able to consistently teach those norms and values that underpins everything that we do at school. So that's
Thank you, Luciel.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think just getting the deep inquiry as you went through the lesson plan happening at an early age, because that's where the brain plasticity allows for the development of neural pathways for innovation and thinking differently, and not just coached into a structured, formatted view of learning that is regurgitated and given back in an assessment. So thank you for that. And then I'm going to hand over to Claudia now, who's going to inspire us as teachers as to how we can do all of this, how a good coaching and teacher development model makes this possible. Because we certainly, as we believe in a competent and capable image of child, believe in a competent and capable image of teacher. And we love to explore these opportunities with our teachers. So thank you, Claudia.
Thank you, Des. Well, one of the questions that I maybe is burning inside of you and you're just wondering about is, how do we get teachers to embrace this, right? Like, how do we develop it in such a way that people are like, this is different, but I want to try it. So there's two different ways that we find. We find that the new professionals, notice I'm not using the term young teacher, because I've realized I am no longer considered a young teacher. So I think we need to change that term to a new professional. The new professionals, they do tend to embrace it quite easily, because a lot of what we do and a lot of our approach is in line with what they've been studying, what they've read in the textbooks, and also they haven't had a chance yet to create patterns and habits of doing things, so they do tend to jump on board. Seasoned professionals, as we all are here, we are not the old teachers, we are seasoned. Us well-seasoned folk tend to look and like ask questions, but honestly, the best way to get a seasoned teacher to embrace this approach is to answer all their questions and let them see it happening. All you need is one classroom, one teacher to start this, and people see the results. And teachers are incredibly hardworking people. They are incredible professionals, and they want to see things changing and improving and growing. So the best way to get people on board and to get people to embrace it is to just do it. Just go ahead and do it and answer questions and fail and fix it and all of that. So, and a lot of our seasoned professionals who join us have been in more traditional environments, and they felt the pain, they felt the stress and the anxiety, and they are looking for something a little bit different. The key here, though, is help and support. You need someone that you can go to. You need someone who's got your back. You need a mentor. And we offer our staff a lot of help and a lot of support. So, so that's what I call in developing the embrace. Next, as we move on to the next slide, I want to chat to you about coaching opportunities, because for me, this comes into the help and support, and this is what makes the difference. So here I have a picture of Usain Bolt and Glenn Mills. Now, for those of you who aren't as sporty as me, only kidding, I'm not, but for those of you who don't really know who Usain Bolt is, he is known as one of the best sprinters of all time. He is the first sprinter to have won gold at the 2008, 2012, no, we haven't had 2016, but the last 3 Olympics, basically. Don't let me do the maths. He is one of the fastest people on earth. He is at the top of his game. Yet, who is standing behind him? His coach. This picture was taken when he was training for the 2012 Olympics. I'm going to let you think about that. Here is a man who's at the top of his game, one of the fastest people on the planet, and he has a coach. And this is very accepted in so many professions. And this is where we can really turn things around. If we start to say, hang on, teachers are professionals, but they also need a coach. Everybody needs a coach. I'm a school leader. I have a coach. I have someone who stands behind me and coaches me. If you look at this picture, you'll see it's not done out in public in a stadium where everyone can see him and he feels vulnerable. It's done in the practicing. It's done in one-on-one sessions. And this is what we do at Nova Pioneer. Every single teacher, whether you're an apprentice teacher or a qualified teacher, has a coach. This is myself and my deans and my associate deans, okay? And that person is assigned to you, and they're the one who stands with you, who comes in, visits lessons, gives you feedback. And here you can see the coach is looking down at his feet. So maybe he's coaching him on his takeoff or his foot placement. It's one little bite-sized thing at a time. We're not going to eat the whole elephants at one go, just small little bites and tweaking things. And then the teacher gets a chance to practice, do it in class, work on it, and then the coach comes back and watches it again and gives the teacher feedback. This is relationship-based, so it's not about power and like the almighty Oz, Wizard of Oz sitting there and saying, you are not worthy. Needing a coach doesn't make you not worthy. It makes you someone who just wants to keep on growing and become the best at their game. And even when you're the best at your game, you still need a coach. Caster Semenya, Usain Bolt, Manchester United, or every top athlete, professional person has a coach. Why do we not have this for our teachers? So this is the big question, and this is the game changer. I don't know what I would do without my coach and my mentor who has helped me on my leadership journey. So if we move back if we move to the next slide, what's very important is that these are seen as mentor relationships. Sorry, Des, one back. I had repeated that slide. These are mentor relationships. It's not power relationships where you come in and evaluating that teacher's worthiness. It's saying, I am here to walk this journey with you. On our campus, we actually refer to those people as coaches. Even though that's your manager, we call them coaches. So when I say, everyone, we're going to have a meeting with instead of saying with our managers or our heads of departments, I say we're going to meet with our coaches. It becomes a natural part of our conversation, and it just takes that like power like vacuum out of it. So it's not about power, it's about coaching and developing. Once again, servant leadership, you rise by lifting others. One thing I do want to note, especially in a public school context, it would be very important if you do implement something like this. I would be very reluctant to include it with your RQMS process. The reason for this is because we wanted to feel authentic and support, where people can be vulnerable and can say to you, listen, I really struggled with my classroom management this week. My children were absolutely off the walls. And if you know this is going to land up on an evaluation sheet that is then like fed into your promotions and things like that, especially while an organization is transitioning to this, it takes the authenticity away. So for a state school, if you want to do something like this, it should be a very, very long time before it feeds into your RQMS. Give it a good few years of building that coaching relationship and that coaching structure. Right. Now the next slide. So here's some key ideas for teachers. So these are some of the things that we coach our teachers on. I'm going to be very quick, but here this is strong voice. And in this is the actual step-by-steps on how to have a strong voice in the classroom. What to do means giving the children very clear what to do instructions. So if we go into a classroom and we see that the teacher's not giving clear instructions, we'll notice then that the kids are a little bit all over the show. So then in that coaching meeting later, we'll actually practice giving very clear what to do instructions. So a teacher practices it with their coach. When they go into class the next day, they're just like, right, arms folded, hands on heads. Okay, next, routines and procedures. We actually practice with our teachers how to establish routines and procedures in the classroom. So while we are very much about, empowering our children, the voice of the child, we also run a very tight ship, because time wasted fighting over pencils and who left their ruler and somebody's ruler got stolen, but it's really in their pencil bag, you're losing teaching time. So we teach our teachers how to have tight routines. Then things like engaging all students. What are strategies that you can use when you're teaching to engage everybody? How do you get that kiddie in the corner who's just not saying anything? Or the other child in the other corner who's having a nap on his desk? How do we minimize that? On the next slide, some of the other things that we look for when we're doing our coaching is teacher radar. So these are good, simple classroom management strategies. And this is where we start off at the beginning of the year. Individual correction. How do you correct a child? How do you have your radar on the kids? How do you catch out that one who's, sticking bubblegum underneath his chair? So if we can move to the next one. These are all things that we call instructional things, right? And then, not instructional, sorry, culture, setting the tone in your classroom management. Then we have a whole other set of things that's instruction. How do we get to more rigor? How do we push them academically? Here, this one is narrate the positive. So this is, saying, oh, I can see 3 children are sitting with their hands on their heads. I see 4. Thank you very much, Johnny, over there. You've got your arms folded. Well done. So these are strategies that we, in the beginning of the year, our teachers spend a lot of time almost training their class, and we spend a lot of time helping our teachers to do that. If we can skip along, you'll see what I've actually been showing you is all part of one poster. So this looks very small, but it's actually printed on an A3 and laminated in every classroom. So that if the teacher, you know, I don't know if maybe it was just me, but you find yourself in one of those situations when you can feel things are just about to spiral and you almost panic. Having something like this in your classroom, you can quickly look at it and go, okay, strong voice. How do I do strong voice? All right, I stand with my feet like this, you know, push my shoulders back. And it's almost a cheat sheet for the teachers on what to do in the classroom. So what are we doing? We're not trying to catch teachers out being imperfect. Perfect doesn't exist. We are always growing and we are here to serve our team. So we create these resources, which if anybody wants, I'm happy to share with you, that prompts and gives teachers ideas and empowers them to change the culture of their classroom. Because when you've got good classroom management, you can do the innovative stuff. You can have the collaboration. You can do the talking and, you know, all of those exciting things. And then the last thing I want to show you, which I'm also happy to share on my last slide, and this has got two goodies in it, but this is a poster all my teachers have. And these are the consequences, right? So we talk about logical consequences and we say, the punishment has to fit the crime. So in every classroom, these are the three main things that teachers have to choose from. And it's in every classroom. So the teacher, it's there, it's a prompt, and she'll work with it on her coach, with her coach. So we say, you break it, you fix it. So if you break the relationship, if you break the stationery, if you break whatever, you have to fix it. Say sorry, but make it right. So it's about restoring what has been broken. The next one is loser privilege. So you go with art until you can treat it right. So you are not treating the stationery properly, you lose your stationery. If you are, bashing people on the playground, then you don't get to play with people on the playground. Then the last one is take a break. Now, take a break is not the same as time out. Take a break is removing the child from the situation with dignity and respect and allowing them to regather themselves. In fact, I had a child one day, she just randomly came up to me and she was like, Mrs. Pina, I just need to collect myself. And that's what it's about, teaching children that emotional regulation. And then on the other side of the screen, you can see these are the three main ingredients whenever we are dishing out any consequences. Is it relevant? So does the punishment fit the crime? Is it respectful? Because we respect our children and we teach them, we treat them with dignity. And then is it reasonable? Like, really, are we going over the top? And above all of this, what we help our teachers with, and we also need to remember as leadership, is giving these consequences is not about lauding power and control. We are trying to raise solid citizens. And this links into all of our culture principles. So that's me trying to not keep, not speak too much. And I'm very passionate about this. And if anybody wants any of these resources, I'm happy to share it with you. It's literally just things I've made myself that I give to my teachers to help them. But the key here is relationships and coaching. And it can happen, even if it's just a more senior teacher in your school who is open to helping to coach you. Ask them. It's worth it. It will transform you as a teacher. And that's me, over and out.
Thank you so much, Claudia. And I think there was a lot shared. I just wanted to see if there was anything else on the questions. No, just some nice comments. Thank you really very much. Are there any questions that people would like to ask now? I know we are sort of just over the time that this was allocated, the 90 minutes, but please just feel free to ask questions, or what we can do is we can share our email addresses in the chat, and you're welcome to email anyone at any time, any one of our team, or email me and I will send it on to the rest of the team. I don't see any hands coming up. No questions, no wonderings. And I think the way we look at this is always to consider the possibilities. How can we make this happen? Rather than saying, I can never do this in my own context. There are always opportunities and possibilities. And we work with a lot of schools in different settings and teachers from different settings and support them in looking at opportunities and possibilities. And that is what Nova Pioneer is about. It's about sharing anything we can so that we can all learn from each other, and learning from others too is really important to us. Right, Bronwyn, should I hand back to you? Are you still with us?
Yeah.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Bronwyn. Yeah, no, I've learned a lot today. Thank you very much for such a wonderful presentation. It resonated with me. Everything that you said resonated well with me. I loved it when you said leadership is an opportunity to serve. Very, very profound. We are fortunate as a school also to have robotics in our school for the design thinking. So I've learned so much that I'll be able to take it back to school. I'm sure Bronwyn is going to save this thing for us. We will keep. I need the documents so that I can be able to show my teachers that what they were doing is right. We just needed someone to confirm that what we were doing is right. I'm really, really happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. That was a very kind word. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.